Ethan Brooks opened his eyes to Italian marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle
I just don't know
skyline,
about
and
this
the
anymore.
unmistakable
What do you
scent of
mean? Talk to
freshly
me.
brewed
It's
coffee
too much. I
wafting
need
from a kitchen
space.
that
Space
cost
from
more than
me?
he'd earned
We're
in
in this
5
together.
years.
I know I can't right now.
Rain drummed against the glass. Last night's storm hadn't stopped. The penthouse was silent except for that rain and the quiet hiss of the coffee maker. His neck ached from the leather couch beneath him, the kind of pain that came from sleeping at an angle no chiropractor would recommend. The morning light was harsh, unforgiving, throwing every detail of the penthouse into sharp relief. The abstract paintings on the walls, the sleek furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, the view of Puget Sound stretching out like a promise of escape. Standing across the room in nothing but his work shirt, the one with his name embroidered over the pocket, was Victoria Hale, CEO of Meridian Industries, worth an estimated $340 million. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, no longer pinned in the severe style she wore at the office. Her fingers trembled around a coffee mug, betraying the composure she was trying so hard to maintain. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear? Regret? Something else entirely? His phone buzzed against the coffee table. The screen lit up with notifications. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. The numbers kept climbing even as he stared. Victoria's voice cut through the silence, steady but fragile, like ice over deep water. Did we? Ethan sat up slowly, every muscle in his body protesting. He kept his eyes on hers, willing her to see the truth before he spoke it. No, ma'am, we didn't. She studied him for a long moment, then walked to the window. The morning sun backlit her silhouette, turning her into something almost ethereal. Her reflection ghosted against the glass as she spoke again. Then why? Before Ethan could answer, his phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Marcus Chen, the CFO, had called 6 times in the last hour. There were text messages from numbers he didn't recognize, names he'd seen on email chains but never spoken to. The notification banner showed a preview from one. Is the board already calling for your termination? But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the woman standing by the window, waiting for an answer to a question that had no good response. The story of how Ethan Brooks ended up sleeping on his CEO's couch started 24 hours earlier, in the mundane rhythm of a Friday evening that should have been unremarkable. He'd been standing near the valet station outside Meridian Industries' downtown headquarters, watching the city lights reflect off the polished black hood of the company's Mercedes S-Class. The air carried that particular October chill that Seattle perfected, the kind that made you grateful for a jacket but didn't yet hint at the brutal winter to come. His daughter Lily had texted him earlier, back when the sun was still up and the day felt manageable. Don't forget we're making pancakes tomorrow, the really good ones with chocolate chips. He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a heart. Simple. Efficient. The way a father communicated with an 8-year-old who understood his world in emojis and concrete promises. Pancakes with Lily. That was worth staying late for. That was worth standing in the cold while executives he'd never meet streamed past in designer suits, heading home to families or mistresses or empty apartments where they'd work until midnight. Ethan had driven for Meridian for 3 years now, ever since the military pension and Sarah's life insurance ran thin, and he'd needed something stable, something with health benefits and a predictable schedule that let him pick Lily up from school most days. Before this, he'd been a Marine Corps mechanic. 8 years fixing Humvees and supply trucks in places that made Seattle's rain feel like a blessing. He'd learned to diagnose engine problems by sound, to rebuild transmissions with borrowed tools, to keep vehicles running long past their intended lifespan because lives depended on it. The skills translated surprisingly well to civilian life. Engines were engines, whether they powered military convoys or executives to board meetings. But the stakes felt different now, lower. A late arrival meant someone missed a dinner reservation, not that someone died in the desert. Inside the Meridian Industries' 25th anniversary gala, champagne flowed like water. Ethan had glimpsed it earlier when he'd walked through to confirm the evening's pickup schedule with the event coordinator. Crystal chandeliers threw prismatic light across tables draped in white linen. A live band played jazz standards that nobody under 50 recognized. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Victoria Hale had stood at the center of it all, elegant in a navy dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. She'd given a speech about vision and growth and the people who made Meridian what it was today. Ethan hadn't heard most of it. He'd been outside by then, checking tire pressure and oil levels, making sure the Mercedes was ready for whenever she needed to leave. But he'd caught the applause through the glass doors, seen the way people clustered around her afterward like planets orbiting a sun. He'd met her exactly 4 times in 3 years. Once during his interview, where she'd shaken his hand and asked a single question about his military service before nodding to HR. Twice in passing when he'd held elevator doors and she'd thanked him without making eye contact. Once when she'd personally sought him out to express gratitude for driving her VP of operations home after the man had gotten food poisoning at a client dinner. She'd remembered his face that day, but not his name, calling him Driver, until Marcus Chen had quietly supplied Brooks. That was fine. Ethan didn't expect the CEO of a company with 1,200 employees to know his name. He was part of the infrastructure, like the heating system or the janitorial staff. Essential but invisible until something went wrong. Around 11 o'clock, Marcus Chen approached him in the parking garage. The CFO was in his early 50s, one of those men who aged well because they could afford the right dermatologists and personal trainers. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who'd made his first million before 30 and his 10th before 40. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral as he spoke. "Brooks, right?" Ethan straightened. "Yes, sir. Ms. Hale's going to need a ride home. Maybe in an hour or so. She's celebrating more than usual tonight." Marcus paused, choosing his next words with visible care. "Can you handle that?" The question carried weight beyond its surface meaning. Ethan recognized the subtext. This wasn't just about driving. This was about discretion, about professionalism, about being the kind of person who could be trusted with a CEO in a vulnerable state. "Of course, sir." Marcus nodded once and disappeared back into the building, leaving Ethan to wait. 1 hour became 2. Through the glass doors, he watched the party thin. Board members departed in town cars. Department heads called their own ride shares. The band packed up their instruments, roadies moving with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this 1,000 times. And Victoria Hale sat alone at a corner table, staring at an empty champagne glass like it held answers to questions no one had asked. Daniel Morrison, the VP of sales, walked past Ethan around midnight. He was a man in his late 40s who wore expensive suits and cheaper cologne, the kind of executive who mistook aggression for leadership. He gestured vaguely toward Victoria as he passed, his voice carrying the particular smugness of someone who thought he was being clever. "Good luck with that one. She's been hitting it hard tonight. First time I've ever seen her drunk." Ethan said nothing. There was nothing to say to a man like Morrison, nothing that wouldn't create complications Ethan couldn't afford. So he watched Morrison climb into his BMW and drive away, taillights disappearing into the Seattle night. By 12:30, only the catering staff remained, quietly clearing tables and stacking chairs. The ballroom looked sad now, empty of people and purpose, just another expensive room waiting for the next event. Victoria stood slowly, steadying herself with one hand on the back of a chair. She looked around as if surprised to find herself alone, as if the absence of others was somehow unexpected. Ethan approached carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded animal, with respect and caution in equal measure. "Ms. Hale, I'm Ethan Brooks. I'm here to drive you home." She looked at him with unfocused eyes, taking several seconds to process his words. When she spoke, her voice carried the careful enunciation of someone working hard to sound sober. "The driver. Right. Marcus said—" She trailed off, then laughed. It was a brittle sound, nothing like the confident tone he'd heard during her speech hours earlier. Everyone left. They gave speeches about loyalty and partnership, and then they all just left. "Yes, ma'am, may I help you to the car?" She waved him off, pride overriding common sense. She took 3 steps toward the door and stumbled. Ethan caught her elbow before she could fall, his Marine Corps reflexes kicking in before his brain fully registered the movement. "Careful." "I'm fine." But she wasn't. She leaned against him, and he could smell the champagne on her breath, could feel how much effort it took her to stay upright. "I don't get drunk. Did you know that? 25 years building this company, and I've never once been drunk at a company event." Ethan kept his voice gentle, the way he spoke to Lily when she was upset, but trying not to show it. "There's a first time for everything. Let's get you home." The parking garage was empty except for the Mercedes. Rain had started, one of those sudden October storms that turned Seattle streets into rivers. Ethan helped Victoria into the back seat, made sure her seatbelt was fastened, then climbed behind the wheel. Her penthouse was in Belltown, normally a 40-minute drive in good traffic. Tonight, with the rain turning the roads into obstacle courses, it would take longer. For the first 10 minutes, Victoria was silent. Ethan focused on driving, on keeping the Mercedes steady through sheets of rain that made visibility a suggestion rather than a guarantee. The wipers beat a steady rhythm, a metronome measuring out the distance between downtown and Belltown, between professional obligation and whatever came next. Then Victoria's voice cut through the sound of rain. "Do you have children, Mr. Brooks?" Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but something in his chest tightened at the question. "Yes, ma'am, a daughter, Lily. She's 8. "Just the one?" "Just the one." "And her mother?" This was where the conversation always went wrong, where people's expressions shifted from polite interest to awkward sympathy. But there was no avoiding it, no graceful way to sidestep the question without creating more discomfort than honesty would. Ethan kept his voice level, professional, the way he'd learned to talk about Sarah's death in the 4 years since it happened. "She passed away 4 years ago. Cancer." The silence that followed felt heavier than before. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer, stripped of the CEO authority and champagne bravado. "I'm sorry. That must be... I can't imagine." "We manage." "Do you?" She leaned forward slightly, and in the rearview mirror, he could see her face more clearly. The makeup was smudged, the carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Do you really manage? Or do you just tell yourself that until you believe it?" It was the kind of question drunk people asked, too personal, too raw, cutting through social niceties to the vulnerable truth underneath. Ethan chose his words carefully, aware that this conversation was happening because Victoria was drunk, but also aware that drunk people sometimes asked the questions sober ones were too afraid to voice. "I think we do both, ma'am. We manage because we have to, and we tell ourselves we're managing because Lily needs to believe it's true." Victoria nodded slowly, processing this. Then she slumped back against the seat, her head resting against the window. For a moment, Ethan thought she might have fallen asleep. But then she spoke again, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Everyone needs to believe something." They drove through the darkened streets of Seattle, the city reduced to blurred lights and shadows. The Space Needle rose in the distance, its observation deck glowing like a beacon. Ethan thought about Lily asleep in their apartment, Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs watching her. He thought about the pancakes they'd make in the morning, about the chocolate chips Lily would insist on adding to every single one. He thought about Sarah, who'd loved pancakes but never got to see Lily old enough to help make them. Victoria's voice startled him from his thoughts. "I had a son. Did you know that?" Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. He knew the company's official history, founded by Victoria and her late husband Thomas 15 years ago, built from a two-person startup into a logistics empire. Thomas had died in a car accident 7 years back, a tragedy that had made the local news for exactly one news cycle before the world moved on. But a son? That wasn't in any of the corporate materials, wasn't mentioned in the profiles that occasionally appeared in business magazines. "No, ma'am, I didn't know." "Nobody does. We kept it private. He was 3 when Thomas died. 7 when I lost him too." Her voice cracked, the CEO mask shattering completely. "Leukemia. Same year I became CEO. Same year I decided that work was safer than feeling anything else." Ethan didn't know what to say. There were no words that would make that kind of loss smaller, no platitudes that would fill the crater left by burying a child and a husband. So he said the only thing that felt honest: "I'm sorry. I truly am. Everyone's sorry." The words came out harsh, bitter. Sorry doesn't bring them back. It doesn't make the empty bedroom any less empty, or the silence any less loud. She laughed again, that same brittle sound. "Do you know why I drank tonight, Mr. Brooks? Because it's not just the company's 25th anniversary, it's also—" She stopped, pressed her fingers against her eyes. "It would have been my son's 18th birthday." The rain hammered against the windshield. Ethan's throat felt tight, his chest constricted with a grief that wasn't his own, but that he recognized intimately. This was the sound of loss, the voice of someone who'd survived something unsurvivable and was still trying to figure out what survival meant. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I truly am." "Stop apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong. You're just the driver." But there was no venom in her words, only exhaustion. "You're just the man who has to listen to the sad drunk woman ramble about ghosts." "You're not rambling, ma'am. You're grieving." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, I suppose I am." They reached her building 20 minutes later. The Belltown high-rise was all glass and steel, the kind of building that made architectural statements about wealth and taste. The doorman, recognizing the company car, came out immediately with an umbrella. But Victoria was slumped against the window, eyes closed, breathing deep and even. Ethan turned in his seat. "Ms. Hale." No response. "Ms. Hale, we're at your building." She stirred slightly but didn't wake. The doorman leaned down to Ethan's window, concern creasing his weathered face. Frank had been working this building for 20 years, had probably seen every possible variation of residents coming home in various states of inebriation. "Is Ms. Hale all right?" "She's had a difficult night. I'll help her upstairs." "Of course. I'll call up to let building security know you're coming." Ethan parked in the underground garage, the Mercedes engine ticking as it cooled. He opened Victoria's door carefully, unfastened her seatbelt, and eased her out of the car. She was taller than Lily, but just as vulnerable in this moment, and something in Ethan's chest tightened. The same protective instinct that kicked in when his daughter had nightmares about monsters under the bed or mean kids at school. "Come on," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "Let's get you home." Victoria's arm draped over his shoulders, dead weight that threatened to pull them both down. Her heels dragged on the concrete as they made their way to the elevator. The building security guard, an older man Ethan vaguely recognized from previous pickups, nodded as they passed. "24th floor, Mr. Brooks. Penthouse B, I'll let you up. The elevator ride felt endless. Victoria's head rested against Ethan's shoulder, and she mumbled something he couldn't quite hear, something that sounded like Thomas or don't go. He didn't ask her to repeat it. Some words were meant to stay private, meant to dissolve into the space between sleep and waking. The penthouse door opened with Victoria's keycard. Ethan had never been inside a place like this. Everything was angles and light, expensive art on walls painted in colors he didn't have names for. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, all clean lines and uncomfortable edges, the kind of pieces people bought because designers told them to, not because anyone would actually want to sit on them. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seattle, the city spread out below like a circuit board, lights marking out streets and buildings in patterns that made sense only from this height. Ethan helped Victoria to a leather couch in the living room. He found a blanket in a nearby closet, soft, expensive, probably cashmere or something equally ridiculous, and draped it over her. She grabbed his wrist before he could pull away, her grip surprisingly strong for someone half asleep. "Don't leave." The words came out barely above a whisper, raw and desperate. "Please." "Everyone always leaves." Ethan's heart broke a little. This wasn't his CEO talking. This wasn't the woman who'd built a $340 million empire from nothing. This was a mother who'd buried her son and her husband, a woman who'd spent 18 years building walls between herself and the world, walls that champagne and grief had finally breached. "I'll stay until you fall asleep. I promise." "Promise?" "I promise." She released his wrist. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep, her face relaxing into something that almost looked peaceful. Ethan sat in a chair across from the couch and pulled out his phone. It was nearly 2 a.m. He texted Lily's babysitter, Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived in the apartment below theirs and had watched Lily since she was 4. "Running late. Be home by 4. Thank you for staying." The reply came quickly. "No problem. She's sound asleep. Take your time." Ethan leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. Just until 3, he told himself. Then he'd slip out quietly and head home. Just an hour, maybe 90 minutes. Long enough to make sure Victoria didn't wake up disoriented, didn't need help, didn't do something foolish like try to walk on a balcony while still drunk. But exhaustion pulled at him like a riptide. 3 years of single parenthood, of early mornings getting Lily ready for school and late nights waiting up to make sure she'd finished her homework. 3 years of being everything. Father and mother, disciplinarian and comforter, provider and caregiver. 3 years of running on 5 hours of sleep and lukewarm coffee, and the stubborn determination to give Lily the childhood she deserved, despite losing her mother before she was old enough to remember her properly. His head tilted back against the chair. His breathing slowed. And somewhere in that space between intention and rest, between duty and human limitation, Ethan Brooks fell asleep in his CEO's penthouse. He woke to the smell of coffee and the worst crick in his neck he'd experienced in years. The morning light was brutal, unforgiving, making him squint as he tried to orient himself. For a confused moment, he didn't know where he was. The furniture was wrong, the ceiling was wrong, everything smelled expensive and unfamiliar. Then memory crashed back. The gala, the drive, Victoria's confession about her son, the promise to stay. He'd promised to stay until she fell asleep. He'd promised, and then he'd broken that promise by falling asleep himself. Victoria Hale stood in the kitchen area, her back to him. She was wearing his work shirt, the button-down he'd taken off last night because the penthouse was warm, the one with E. Brooks embroidered over the pocket in Meridian Industries corporate blue. It hung to her thighs, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her hair was loose, no longer pinned in the severe style she wore at work. She turned as he sat up, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. Her expression was unreadable, not angry, not grateful, not anything he could identify. just carefully neutral, the CEO mask back in place, even if the rest of her looked disheveled. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks." Ethan stood quickly, every muscle protesting. His back ached from the awkward angle of the chair. His neck felt like someone had tied it in knots. "Ms. Hale, I'm sorry. I meant to leave. I fell asleep. Nothing happened. I swear to you, nothing happened." "I know." She set one mug on the counter between them. The action was deliberate, creating a physical barrier of space and porcelain. "I remember most of last night. Not all of it, but enough. You were kind. You stayed when I asked you to, and you kept your distance." She gestured to the couch where the blanket was still neatly tucked. "You're not the kind of man who takes advantage." Relief flooded through him so intensely he felt lightheaded. "Thank you. I wouldn't. I would never." "I believe you." She picked up her own mug, took a sip, then looked at him with something that might have been sadness or regret, or a mixture of both. "But it doesn't matter what I believe. I don't understand." Victoria pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. The image made his stomach drop. It was a photograph, grainy but unmistakable, security footage from the building's garage elevator. Victoria leaning against him, his arm around her waist supporting her weight. The angle made it look intimate. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. "This went out on the company's internal gossip channel at 6 o'clock this morning," Victoria said quietly. By 6:30, it had been forwarded to half the executive team. By 7, the board was calling for an emergency meeting. Ethan stared at the image, his mind racing through implications. "I was helping you. You couldn't walk on your own." "I know that. But this," she gestured at the photo, "doesn't show context. It shows the CEO and her driver in a compromising position. And perception, Mr. Brooks, is everything in a company like Meridian." "So what does that mean?" Victoria set her phone down, her movements careful and controlled. "It means that by the time you get home, you'll have an email from HR asking you to meet with them first thing Monday morning. It means there will be an investigation. And it means that no matter what you say, no matter what I say, there will be people who believe you did something wrong." "But I didn't." The words came out more desperately than he intended. "I know." Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "But the damage is already done." Ethan's phone buzzed. He pulled it out with shaking hands. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, most from numbers he didn't recognize, a few from colleagues he barely knew, one from Marcus Chen that just said, "Call me ASAP." He looked up at Victoria, and for the first time since waking, he saw past the CEO facade to the woman underneath. She understood exactly what was about to happen to him, understood the machinery of corporate politics that would grind him up regardless of truth or intention, and she hated that she couldn't stop it. "You should go," she said quietly, looking away, "before anyone else sees you leaving." "Ms. Hale, Victoria, if we're going to be caught in a scandal together, you might as well use my first name." Ethan almost smiled. "Almost. Victoria, I want you to know that I don't regret staying. You needed someone, and I'm glad I was there. Whatever happens next, I can handle it." She studied him for a long moment, really looking at him for maybe the first time since he'd started working at Meridian. "I believe you can, but I'm still sorry it's necessary." He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and headed for the door. Just before he left, he turned back. Victoria Hale stood in her kitchen wearing a company driver's shirt, holding a mug of coffee, and for just a moment, she looked like she might cry. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a sad, drunk woman. I think you're human, and there's no shame in that. Thank you, Ethan." He slipped out the door, letting it close softly behind him. The hallway was empty, neutral carpet and numbered doors that all looked the same. He found the elevator, rode it down to the parking garage where the Mercedes still sat. The drive home took 30 minutes through early Saturday morning traffic. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind raced through scenarios, none of them good. He'd done nothing wrong. He knew that. Victoria knew that. But in the world they lived in, a world of optics and corporate politics and photographs without context, truth didn't always matter. Truth was malleable, shaped by whoever controlled the narrative. And Ethan Brooks, driver, father, former Marine mechanic, he didn't control anything. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Ethan woke before his alarm, showered, and dressed in the only suit he owned, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and kept in the back of his closet for emergencies. If ever there was an emergency, this was it. The suit still fit, though it pulled slightly across the shoulders. 4 years of carrying Lily, of moving furniture by himself, of doing all the physical labor that came with single parenthood had added muscle he hadn't possessed when Sarah was alive. Lily sat at the breakfast table, swinging her legs and eating toast with strawberry jam. She studied him with the frank assessment children specialized in, the kind of look that saw through adult pretenses to the anxiety underneath. "You look fancy, Daddy. Do you have a special meeting?" Ethan knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to eye level. "Something like that." "Is it important?" "Yeah, sweetheart, it is. But whatever happens, I need you to remember something. Your dad always tries to do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when other people don't understand." "Okay." She frowned, a smear of jam on her chin. "Are you in trouble?" "I don't know yet, but if I am, it won't be because I did something wrong. Sometimes people misunderstand things, and we have to be patient while they figure out the truth." She nodded solemnly, processing this with the seriousness she applied to important matters. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck, toast forgotten. "You're the best daddy. Everyone knows that." Ethan held her close, breathing in strawberry shampoo and jam and the particular sweetness of childhood innocence. "I love you, Lily. Love you more." He dropped her at school, watched her run through the gates with her backpack bouncing, then drove to Meridian Industries headquarters. The building rose 12 stories against the Seattle skyline, glass and steel proclaiming corporate success. Ethan had walked through these doors 1,000 times. Today felt different. Today felt like walking into an execution. Jennifer Watkins was waiting in the HR conference room. She was in her mid-40s, efficient in the way HR directors had to be, simultaneously sympathetic and detached, capable of firing someone while maintaining the appearance of regret. Beside her sat Robert Keene, the company's legal counsel, a man whose entire demeanor suggested he billed by the minute and resented every second spent on matters beneath him. And Daniel Morrison, VP of Sales, leaned back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who knew the game was rigged in his favor. Ethan's stomach tightened. Morrison had been at the gala. Morrison had made that comment about Victoria drinking. Jennifer gestured to the chair across from them, her tone neutral and professional in a way that somehow made everything worse. "Mr. Brooks, please sit." Ethan sat. The chair was uncomfortable, designed for short meetings where discomfort encouraged quick resolutions. The conference room smelled of cleaning solution and stress sweat, his or someone else's, he couldn't tell. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. "I'm sure you know why you're here. A photograph was circulated Friday night showing you and Ms. Hale in what appears to be a compromising position. We need to understand what happened." Ethan kept his voice level, choosing each word with care. "I drove Ms. Hale home from the company anniversary gala. She'd had too much to drink. I helped her to her apartment to make sure she was safe. That's all." Morrison leaned forward, his expression skeptical in a way that felt rehearsed. "That's all?" You stayed in her penthouse until morning. I fell asleep in a chair. Ms. Hale asked me not to leave until she was settled. I intended to go home, but I was exhausted. Nothing inappropriate happened. Robert Keene's pen hovered over his legal pad, ready to record any admission that could be weaponized later. Can anyone verify that? Ms. Hale can. Building security saw us enter. There's footage. Jennifer's expression softened slightly, a crack in the professional facade. We've seen the elevator footage. It doesn't show what happened inside the penthouse, and Ms. Hale's account, while consistent with yours, is complicated by the fact that she was intoxicated. Morrison scoffed, the sound theatrical and deliberate. Of course she'd say that. She's protecting the company's reputation. He paused for effect, letting his words settle. But the optics here, Brooks, the optics are terrible. You're a driver. She's the CEO. You spent the night in her home. How does that look? Ethan met his eyes, refusing to look away first. It looks like I did my job and made sure she got home safely. Morrison's voice hardened, dropping the pretense of concern. Your job is to drive, not to spend the night with your boss. Ethan's jaw tightened, muscles clenching with the effort of staying calm. I didn't spend the night with her. I spent the night in her living room making sure she didn't choke on her own vomit or fall and hit her head. That's what decent human beings do. Robert Keene set down his pen, his voice carrying warning. Watch your tone, Mr. Brooks. I'm not the one implying something that didn't happen. Ethan looked at each of them in turn, making sure they saw him not as a driver, but as a man defending his integrity. I have a daughter. I have a reputation in this company. I would never compromise either by doing what you're suggesting. Jennifer's expression softened further, genuine sympathy breaking through professional distance. We're not accusing you of anything yet. We're gathering information. But you have to understand, when something like this happens, we have protocols. The board has concerns. Several executives have raised questions about your judgment. The word hit Ethan like a physical blow. My judgment was to not leave an intoxicated woman alone when she was clearly in distress. If that's poor judgment, then I don't know what world we're living in. Morrison's response came quickly, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. It's the world where perception matters. And right now, the perception is that you took advantage of a vulnerable situation. I didn't take advantage of anything. Then why didn't you call someone else? Her assistant, a female colleague? Why did you specifically have to stay? Ethan stared at him, seeing clearly now that this wasn't about understanding what happened. This was about constructing a narrative that served someone's agenda. Because there was no one else. Everyone had already left. And I'm not going to apologize for being the person who stayed when she needed someone. The room fell silent. Jennifer exchanged a glance with Robert, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then she cleared her throat, gathering herself for what came next. Mr. Brooks, pending the outcome of this investigation, we're placing you on paid administrative leave. You'll surrender your company ID and vehicle keys. You're not to contact Ms. Hale directly or discuss this matter with other employees. Do you understand? The words landed like punches, each one precise, targeted, devastating. You're suspending me. We're protecting all parties involved while we review the facts. The facts are that I did nothing wrong. Jennifer's expression flickered, sympathy fighting duty. Then the investigation will prove that. In the meantime, this is procedure. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to flip the table and demand they look at him, really look at him, and see that he was telling the truth. But he'd learned long ago that anger didn't change minds. Only patience and evidence did that. So he pulled his ID badge from his wallet, set it on the table with deliberate care. He reached into his pocket and placed his car keys beside it, the metal clinking against the conference table's polished surface. Is there anything else? We'll be in touch. Ethan stood, nodded once, and walked out of the conference room. The hallway felt too bright, too exposed, every surface reflecting fluorescent light that made his eyes ache. Colleagues passed by, their eyes flicking toward him, then away, guilty knowledge written across their faces. Word had already spread. He could see it in how they moved, in how they suddenly found reasons to study their phones or examine the carpet pattern. He took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the cool October air, and stood on the sidewalk trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to his life. His phone rang. Marcus Chen's name appeared on the screen. Ethan answered, his voice rough. Marcus. Ethan, I heard. I'm sorry. Did you know they were going to suspend me? A pause, heavy with things Marcus couldn't or wouldn't say. I suspected. The board's been pushing for action since Saturday. They're worried about liability, about the company's image. Victoria's been fighting them, but there's only so much she can do without looking like she's showing favoritism. Favoritism? Ethan laughed, the sound bitter and wrong. Marcus, I drove her home. That's it. I know. And for what it's worth, I believe you. But there are people in this company who've been waiting for Victoria to make a mistake. They see this as their opportunity. Opportunity to do what? Marcus sighed, the sound carrying years of corporate politics and boardroom battles. To undermine her, to question her judgment, to suggest she's not fit to lead. Daniel Morrison's been angling for more power for years. He's using this to position himself with the board. The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture Ethan should have seen earlier. So I'm collateral damage. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. A long pause stretched between them, filled with traffic sounds and the distant cry of seagulls over Puget Sound. When Marcus spoke again, his voice carried genuine sympathy mixed with resignation. Ethan, I know this is hard, but keep your head down. Let the investigation run its course. The truth will come out. Will it? Because right now, it feels like the truth doesn't matter as much as the story people want to believe. Marcus couldn't argue with that. They both knew Ethan was right. They said goodbye, and Ethan stood on the sidewalk for another few minutes, watching people stream in and out of the building. People with jobs, people whose lives weren't falling apart because they'd done a kind thing. He walked to the bus stop, rode home in silence, and arrived at his empty apartment just after 11. The silence was deafening. Ethan made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to think through his options. He could hire a lawyer, but with what money? He could fight back publicly, but that would only feed the gossip machine, turn him into a protagonist in a story he didn't want to star in. He could quit, but then Lily would ask why, and he'd have to explain that the world punished people for doing the right thing. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize, though the message made it clear who'd sent it. This is Victoria. I'm sorry about this morning. I'm doing everything I can. Please don't give up. Ethan stared at the message for a long time, then typed back carefully. I'm not giving up, but I'm not sure what I'm fighting for anymore. Her response came quickly. Your integrity, that's worth fighting for. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that integrity mattered more than perception, that truth mattered more than optics. But sitting alone in his apartment, suspended from his job, labeled as someone who'd crossed a line he'd never even approached, it was hard to hold on to that belief. The rest of Monday passed in a blur. Ethan picked Lily up from school, made dinner, helped her with homework on long division that made his head hurt. She asked about his meeting, and he told her it went fine, that sometimes work things took longer than expected to resolve. She accepted this without question because she trusted him, because in her world fathers didn't lie and fairness eventually prevailed. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch and opened his laptop. The company's internal message board was technically accessible from home. He wasn't supposed to look at it while on leave. The HR manual was clear about that. But he needed to know what people were saying, needed to understand the narrative being constructed about him. Ethan closed the laptop before he could read more. His hands were shaking, not from anger, though there was plenty of that, but from the sheer helplessness of watching people construct a narrative that bore no resemblance to reality. He thought about Sarah. She would have known what to say. She always did. He'd thought that if he just kept doing the right thing, kept being a good father and a reliable employee, life would reward that somehow, or at least not punish it. He'd been wrong. Tuesday morning brought 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Jennifer Watkins asking him to come back to the office. When he arrived, this time in jeans and a button-down, the suit staying in the closet, she was waiting with Robert Keene and someone new. A woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a recorder on the table between them. Ethan's blood went cold. Police? Why are the police involved? The woman identified herself with practiced efficiency. Detective Sarah Kim, Seattle Police Department. Ms. Hale has filed a formal statement clarifying the events of Friday night. We're following up to ensure all parties are protected and that there's a complete record of what occurred. I already told you what happened. Detective Kim's expression remained neutral, professionally blank in the way cops learn to be. Now you need to tell me, she clicked the recorder on. For the record, please state your full name and your position at Meridian Industries. Ethan's voice sounded hollow even to himself. Ethan James Brooks, company driver. On the night of October 13th, you drove Ms. Victoria Hale from the company anniversary gala to her residence. Is that correct? Yes. What time did you arrive at her residence? Around 12:30. And what happened when you arrived? Ethan recounted the night briefly, helping Victoria home, staying at her request, falling asleep in a chair. Detective Kim listened without interrupting, taking notes in shorthand he couldn't decipher. When he finished, she looked up, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly towards something that might have been approval. Ms. Hale's account matches yours exactly. Building security footage shows you entering at 12:37 and leaving at 7:49 the following morning. There's no evidence of wrongdoing. Relief crashed through him so intensely he felt lightheaded. Then why am I here? Robert Keene leaned forward, his legal training evident in how carefully he phrased his response. Because the police needed to verify that there wasn't a different kind of situation occurring. Allegations of that nature require thorough investigation. The implication hit Ethan with the force of a physical blow. You thought I assaulted her? You thought I... He couldn't finish the sentence, Shiaz. The accusation was too vile, too far from anything he was capable of contemplating. Jennifer spoke quickly, trying to soften what couldn't be softened. We had to rule it out. It's procedure when alcohol and power dynamics are involved. Power dynamics? Ethan laughed, a bitter sound that echoed wrong in the corporate conference room. She's the CEO. I'm a driver. If anyone had power in that situation, it sure as hell wasn't me. Detective Kim closed her notebook with a decisive snap. Mr. Brooks, no charges are being filed. Ms. Hale has made it very clear that you acted appropriately and that she's grateful you were there. From a legal standpoint, this matter is closed. The phrase legal standpoint hung in the air, implying everything it didn't say. Ethan looked at Jennifer and Robert, seeing clearly now that police clearance didn't mean corporate clearance, that different systems operated by different rules. But from a company standpoint, he didn't bother making it a question. Jennifer and Robert exchanged another of those meaningful glances. When Jennifer spoke, her voice carried apologies she couldn't quite express directly. The investigation is ongoing. We're interviewing other employees, reviewing the timeline, assessing what? You just said there's no evidence of wrongdoing. Robert corrected him with the precision of someone who parsed language for a living. There's no evidence of criminal wrongdoing, but there are still questions about professional judgment and appropriate boundaries. Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Then tell me what I should have done. Left her alone when she was drunk and vulnerable? Called someone who'd already gone home? Risked her falling or getting hurt because I was worried about appearances? No one answered. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of phones ringing in other offices. That's what I thought. Ethan grabbed his jacket. I'll wait to hear from you about the investigation. But if you're looking for an apology, you won't get one. I'd do the same thing again tomorrow. He walked out before they could respond. The rest of the week crawled by with the particular torture of enforced idleness. Ethan stayed home, took Lily to school, picked her up, made dinner, read bedtime stories. Normal life continued in their small apartment while his professional life imploded 12 blocks away. Thursday afternoon brought Lily home from school quieter than usual. She climbed into the car for pickup, buckled her seatbelt with unusual care, and stared out the window with an expression too serious for an 8-year-old. Hey, Lil, how was school? Fine. Just fine. Not good or great or any of the enthusiastic descriptors she usually employed. Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, seeing trouble written in the set of her small shoulders. Just fine? She turned to look at him, her face troubled in a way that made his chest tighten. Daddy, why did Emma's mom say you did something bad? The question landed like a punch to the gut. What? At pickup, Emma's mom was talking to another mom. She said your name. She said you did something bad at work and that's why you were home last week. Her eyes were wet, threatening tears she was fighting to hold back. Did you do something bad? Ethan pulled over into a grocery store parking lot, turned off the engine, and unbuckled so he could turn fully to face her. This moment mattered more than any HR meeting or police interview. This was his daughter asking if her father was the man she believed him to be. Lily, listen to me. I didn't do anything bad. I helped someone who needed help. But sometimes when people don't understand the whole story, they make up their own version. And sometimes that version isn't true. But why would they make up bad things about you? How did you explain adult cruelty to a child? How did you describe the way gossip filled gaps in knowledge with assumptions shaped by prejudice and envy? Because people get scared when they don't understand something, or because they want to believe something that fits their own ideas about the world. It's not fair, but it happens. That's stupid. Her voice carried pure indignation, the kind only children possessed before the world taught them that fairness was optional. Yeah, sweetheart, it is. Lily wiped her eyes with fierce determination. I told Emma's mom she was wrong. I said, my daddy's the best person ever, and he would never do anything bad. Ethan's throat tightened. He unbuckled her seatbelt and pulled her into a hug, her small body pressed against his chest, her heart beating fast with residual anger and fear. Thank you for defending me. That was brave. I wasn't scared. I was just mad. She pulled back, looking at him with Sarah's eyes. Are other people saying bad things too? He couldn't lie to her. Wouldn't lie, even though the truth would hurt them both. Some people are, but the people who matter, the people who really know me, they know the truth. You know the truth, and that's what's most important. She nodded solemnly, processing this with the gravity she brought to important matters. I know the truth, and Emma knows now too because I told her. They went home. Ethan made spaghetti, Lily's favorite, and they ate dinner while she told him about the math test she'd aced and the book she was reading about dragons. Normal things. Good things. The kind of details that reminded him why he kept fighting, even when the fight seemed pointless. After Lily went to bed, Ethan sat on the couch and opened his laptop. The company message boards had new activity. Someone had leaked information about Friday's board meeting. a meeting Ethan hadn't known was scheduled. The thread was titled, "Morrison versus Hale, the Real Story." He read through the comments, his anger building with each one. Morrison's been waiting for this chance for years. He wants the CEO position. If Victoria gets forced out over this, it'll prove that women can't lead without being second-guessed on every decision. Maybe she shouldn't have gotten drunk at a company event. Just saying. Brooks is the real victim here. He did the decent thing and got crucified for it. Or maybe he's lying. Maybe something did happen and they're both covering it up. Then one comment made Ethan pause, scrolling back to read it more carefully. Anyone else notice that Morrison was one of the first people to leave the gala? Almost like he wanted Victoria to be in a vulnerable position. Another user had posted a timeline. Morrison left the gala at 10:47 p.m. Building security confirmed. Victoria was still inside. He could have offered to help her get home. He didn't. Brooke stayed until midnight, then drove her home when literally everyone else had bailed. So who's the one showing poor judgment here? Ethan closed the laptop. His head hurt. His heart hurt. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion and frustration was a growing sense that this situation was far more complex than he'd realized. Daniel Morrison hadn't just seized an opportunity. He'd helped create one. Friday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Ethan drove to work despite the suspension, parking in the visitor lot because his access badge no longer worked. He had one errand, one necessary task before the weekend trapped him in waiting. He needed to retrieve his personal items from his locker in the driver's break room. A photo of Lily, his Marine Corps Challenge coin, the thermos Sarah had given him their last Christmas together. The break room was empty when he arrived. Tom and James, the other drivers, were out on runs. Ethan opened his locker, gathering the small accumulation of a 3-year career. As he was leaving, his phone rang. Marcus Chen again. "Ethan, where are you?" "Break room, getting my things." "Don't leave yet. I need to see you. My office." 5 minutes. Marcus's office was on the executive floor, a space Ethan had never visited before. The elevator ride felt wrong, like trespassing in territory he had no right to occupy. Marcus met him at the door, ushered him inside quickly, and closed it behind them. "Sit." Ethan sat. Marcus's office was modest by executive standards. Functional desk, comfortable chairs, a window overlooking the parking garage rather than the city. Photos lined one bookshelf. Marcus with his wife and 3 kids, Marcus at various company milestones, Marcus and Victoria at the ribbon cutting for their Portland distribution center. Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if Ethan wanted one, then sat across from him with the exhausted expression of someone who'd been fighting battles on multiple fronts. "Ethan, I found something. Something that changes everything." "What?" Marcus pulled up footage on his computer, turned the monitor so Ethan could see. Security camera timestamp 2:15 a.m., the night of the gala. The location was Victoria's building lobby, not the garage where Ethan had helped her from the car, but the main entrance. Daniel Morrison walked into frame, checking his phone. At 2:22 a.m., a young woman emerged from the elevator. Blonde, early 20s, carrying a purse. She looked around, spotted Morrison, approached him. They spoke briefly. Morrison handed her something, an envelope maybe, or a phone. The woman nodded, took what he'd given her, and left through the front entrance. Morrison checked his watch, typed something on his phone, then left through the same exit. "The photo wasn't leaked." Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. "It was arranged. Morrison set you up, set Victoria up. This whole thing was orchestrated." Ethan's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. "The woman he met, we don't know who she is yet, but Victoria suspected something was off the moment the photo leaked. The timing was too perfect. She asked me to dig into it Saturday afternoon. Took me 4 days to pull all the building footage and track Morrison's movements. She suspected something was off about how quickly the rumors spread, how perfectly timed everything was. When building security ran through all their footage from that night, they found this. Morrison asked the security guard which floor Victoria lived on. I heard that from someone on the message boards, but I thought it was just gossip. Marcus nodded grimly. It's not gossip. Frank, the doorman, confirmed it. Morrison came by around 8 p.m., before the gala even ended, asking questions about Victoria's unit. Said he needed to drop off some documents. Frank told him penthouse B, 24th floor. Marcus continued. Frank didn't think anything of it at the time. Morrison showed his Meridian executive ID, said it was legitimate business. It wasn't until we started asking questions that Frank remembered and flagged it as suspicious. And then Morrison left the party early. 10:47 p.m., plenty of time to arrange for someone to be in position. Victoria's building has multiple entrances. The woman could have been waiting in the lobby for hours. Ethan stared at the frozen image on the screen. Morrison's face caught in profile, expression calculating. He wanted Victoria vulnerable, wanted her isolated, and when I helped her, that gave him the ammunition he needed. Two birds with one stone. Undermine Victoria's leadership, create a scandal that makes her look reckless, and destroy the reputation of the one witness who could confirm she needed help. The cold calculation of it took Ethan's breath away. How do we prove it? Marcus pulled up another document, phone records. Morrison's cell. 7 calls to an unknown number between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. that night. All outgoing, each one less than a minute. Like he was coordinating something. That's not proof he arranged for the photo. No, but it's enough to create reasonable doubt. Enough to make the board ask questions they should have asked from the beginning. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Victoria's presenting this at the board meeting this afternoon, 2 o'clock. She wants you there. Me? I'm suspended. HR said I'm not supposed to be in the building. Victoria overrode them. As CEO, she has that authority. And she wants Morrison to see you. Wants him to know that you're not some disposable driver he can sacrifice for his ambition. Ethan thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to always do the right thing, even when it was hard. What if this backfires? What if the board sides with Morrison? Marcus met his eyes with the steadiness of someone who'd already made peace with worst-case scenarios. Then we both update our resumes, but at least we go down fighting. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in the executive conference room on the 12th floor. Ethan arrived at 1:45. Wearing the funeral suit again because it was all he had. Victoria met him outside the room, her expression composed but her eyes betraying the strain of the past week. Thank you for coming. Marcus said you wanted me here. I need you here. Not just as a witness, but because you deserve to watch Morrison answer for what he did. She paused, studying him. How are you holding up? I've been better. My daughter's hearing rumors at school. People look at me like I'm either a predator or a victim, and I'm not sure which is worse. Victoria's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. For all of it. If I hadn't asked you to stay, don't. Ethan's voice was firmer than he intended. You needed help. I gave it. Morrison weaponized decency. That's on him, not us. She nodded slowly. When we go in there, let me do the talking. Morrison's going to try to control the narrative, make this about my judgment or your supposed impropriety. But I have evidence now. Real evidence. And I'm going to bury him with it. The conference room doors opened. 12 board members sat around a massive table, nameplates marking territories like a formal dinner. Victoria's seat was at the head. Morrison sat to her right, looking comfortable and confident, a man who believed he'd already won. Ethan took a seat near the back, away from the table but close enough to hear everything. Several board members glanced at him, expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. Robert Chen, the oldest board member, frowned but said nothing. Victoria stood at the head of the table. Behind her, a large monitor displayed the Meridian Industries logo. She picked up a remote control. "Thank you all for coming. I know this meeting was called on short notice, but recent events require immediate board attention." Morrison leaned back, his voice carrying false concern. "Members of the board, before we begin, I want to say that I take no pleasure in this situation. But we must address the serious questions about Ms. Hale's judgment. Getting intoxicated at a company event, creating a compromising situation with a subordinate employee. These aren't trivial matters. They speak to leadership capacity, to the kind of example we're setting for our 1,200 employees." Victoria's expression didn't change. "I agree. We should examine judgment, particularly the judgment of executives who orchestrate scandals to advance their own careers." Morrison's confident expression flickered. "I'm not sure what you're implying." Victoria clicked the remote. The monitor changed, displaying security footage. Timestamp 2:15 a.m., October 14th. Morrison's face was clearly visible as he stood in a building lobby checking his phone. This footage was discovered by building security during their review of the night in question. It shows Daniel Morrison entering my building at 2:15 in the morning, 2.5 hours after he left the gala, meeting with an unknown woman, conducting some kind of transaction. The room went silent. Every board member leaned forward, watching as the footage played. The young woman appeared, approached Morrison, took something from him. Then both departed. Morrison's face had gone red. That's completely irrelevant to this discussion. I was meeting a client. At 2 in the morning? In my building? After spending the evening at a company gala where you were one of the first executives to leave?" Robert Chen's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. "Daniel, what were you doing there?" Morrison looked around the table, searching for allies. His confidence was cracking, replaced by something that looked like panic. "I told you, meeting a client. It's confidential. I can't discuss specifics." Victoria clicked to the next slide. Phone records, numbers highlighted in yellow. "These are your cell phone records from that night. 7 calls to an unknown number between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. All outgoing. All under 1 minute. The pattern suggests coordination, not conversation. You have no right to access my phone records. I have every right when those records are relevant to an internal investigation into misconduct." Victoria's voice was ice. "And before you threaten legal action, remember that our employee handbook clearly states that company-issued phones are subject to review during investigations." Your phone. Company-issued. Patricia Chen asked, "But how did the photo get onto our internal systems?" "That requires employee credentials." Victoria advanced to the next slide, an IT audit log, timestamp 5:47 a.m. The photo was uploaded from an unregistered device using a guest Wi-Fi account created Friday night at 10:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Daniel left the gala. The account was authorized using, she paused, Daniel Morrison's executive access code. His code gave that guest account posting privileges to internal channels. Morrison's face went white. "You gave your access code to whoever you hired," Victoria continued. "She used it to bypass security and post directly to the gossip channel at 5:47 Saturday morning. The account was deleted at 6:03 a.m., but I'd recovered everything." Morrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is a witch hunt. You're deflecting from your own mistakes by attacking me." His voice rose. "I've given 15 years to this company, 15 years of results, and you're going to throw that away over some security footage that proves nothing?" Victoria remained standing, unmoved by his theatrics. "Let me tell you what I think happened, Daniel. You saw an opportunity that night. You saw me vulnerable, drinking more than I should have, grieving in a way I rarely allow myself to do publicly. You saw Ethan Brooks doing the decent thing, helping me when no one else stayed. and you realized you could turn basic human kindness into a weapon. She clicked to another slide, more security footage, this time showing Morrison talking to Frank the doorman. This is from 8 p.m., before the gala even ended. You asked Frank which floor I lived on, claimed you needed to drop off documents. Why would you need to know my floor number, Daniel? You've never delivered documents to my home before. You've never had reason to visit my building. The board members were watching Morrison now, their expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. The narrative he'd been constructing for days was collapsing in real time. Victoria advanced to the next slide. A timeline. Here's what I believe happened. You left the gala at 10:47, early enough that no one would notice. You arranged for someone, possibly the woman in this footage, to be positioned in my building. When Ethan helped me home, your operative photographed us in the elevator. That photo was then leaked to our internal systems, timed perfectly to create maximum damage before anyone could investigate the context. That's speculation. You have no proof I arranged anything. I have phone records showing repeated calls. I have footage of you in my building at a suspicious hour, meeting someone who clearly wasn't a client. No client meeting involves a brief exchange in a lobby. I have testimony from building security that you asked about my apartment location. And I have the convenient timing of a leaked photo that serves your interests perfectly. Patricia Chen, the recently appointed CFO who'd replaced Morrison's ally, spoke up. Ms. Hale, why would Daniel do this? What's his motive? Victoria looked at Morrison, her expression cold. Ambition. Daniel's been positioning himself for advancement for years. He's cultivated board relationships, undermined colleagues, and waited for an opportunity to demonstrate that I'm unfit to lead. When I made myself vulnerable, when I had too much to drink at a company event and needed help getting home, he saw his chance. This is defamation! Morrison's voice rose, losing its calculated control. I'll sue. Please do sue. Victoria's voice was steady, almost welcoming the threat. Because discovery will be fascinating. We'll subpoena your phone records, interview your contacts, trace the source of that photograph. We'll find the woman you met in my lobby and ask what you paid her. And we'll establish conclusively whether you orchestrated this scandal or whether I'm, as you claim, making baseless accusations. The room was utterly silent. Morrison looked around the table one more time, seeing no support, no allies willing to throw themselves into his sinking ship. His shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. Robert Chen spoke with the authority of someone who'd been making difficult decisions longer than most people in the room had been alive. Daniel, I think you need to explain yourself, right now, before this goes any further. Morrison's jaw worked. He looked at Patricia, at the other board members searching for support. Found none. The footage is out of context. I was meeting a business contact. The timing is coincidental. At 2:15 in the morning? Patricia's voice was flat. In Victoria's building? Morrison's confidence cracked. Look, Victoria's judgment has been compromised. Everyone saw her at the gala. Drunk, unprofessional. I didn't create that situation. I just documented what was already happening. By arranging for someone to photograph her, Robert Chen's tone was ice. Morrison's shoulders sagged. His voice came out smaller, defeated. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I just wanted to raise questions, to show the board that she was too emotional, too focused on employee welfare instead of results. You deserved to know. Deserved to know what? Victoria's voice cut like a blade. That I'm human? That I experience grief? That sometimes I need help just like everyone else in this company? You put yourself in a compromising position. I asked for help getting home safely. Ethan Brooks provided that help with complete professionalism. The only person who compromised anything was you when you decided to turn compassion into a scandal for your own advancement. Victoria looked at each board member in turn, her gaze steady and unflinching. Here's what's going to happen. Daniel Morrison will resign from Meridian Industries effective immediately. He will issue a public apology to both myself and Mr. Brooks for the damage he's caused. And this board will implement new policies protecting employees who act in good faith to help colleagues in distress. Because if we're a company that punishes decency, if we're a company where kindness is weaponized and good people are destroyed for doing the right thing, then we're not a company worth leading. Morrison made one last attempt. You can't force me to resign. I have a contract. Read your contract more carefully. Robert Keene, the legal counsel, spoke for the first time. Section 12, paragraph 3. Conduct detrimental to company interests. Orchestrating internal scandals certainly qualifies. Robert Chen raised his hand. All in favor of Ms. Hale's proposal regarding Mr. Morrison's resignation and the implementation of new protective policies? 7 hands went up. 3 remained down. Morrison's allies, but even they looked uncertain. Morrison sat frozen. Robert Chen's voice cut through. Daniel, as of this moment, you're suspended pending formal termination proceedings. Legal will contact you this afternoon regarding separation terms. Leave your company devices with security on your way out. Morrison stood slowly, looked around the table one last time, then walked out without another word. Motion carries. Robert Chen looked at Ethan, who'd been sitting motionless throughout the entire proceeding. Mr. Brooks, would you please stand? Ethan stood, his legs unsteady. He hadn't expected to be addressed directly, had assumed he was here merely as an observer. Victoria turned to face him. Mr. Brooks, you were suspended, investigated by both HR and police, and subjected to professional humiliation that extended to your daughter's school playground. None of that was justified. All of it happened because you did the right thing in a moment when doing the right thing was both necessary and costly. She paused, letting her words settle. That's not just good character. That's the kind of leadership this company needs. The kind of leadership I failed to recognize when I saw you simply as a driver, rather than as someone with integrity worth building on. Ethan's throat tightened. He had no idea where this was going, but the weight of 12 board members' attention was crushing. Victoria continued, her voice carrying a resolve that left no room for argument. Effective immediately, I'm promoting you to Director of Ethics and Professional Standards. Your job will be to build a system, from the ground up, that ensures situations like this never happen again at Meridian. A system where employees who speak up are protected, where good faith efforts to help colleagues are celebrated rather than punished, where the culture we claim to value actually exists in practice. The room erupted. Board members talked over each other. Patricia Chen was nodding enthusiastically. Robert Chen looked skeptical but not hostile. Others seemed confused, uncertain. Ethan found his voice, though it came out rough. Ms. Hale, I'm a driver. I don't have a business degree. I've never managed anyone. I don't know the first thing about building an ethics program. You have the only qualification that matters. Victoria's voice was firm. You know what it's like to do the right thing and be punished for it. You know how it feels when the system is designed to protect the powerful rather than the principled. You understand, in your bones, what needs to change. That's not something you can learn in business school. That's lived experience. That's moral authority. She looked back at the board. Mr. Brooks will report directly to me. He'll have full authority to investigate complaints, interview employees, and recommend disciplinary action up to and including termination. He'll work with HR and legal, but he won't answer to them. His mandate is to fix what's broken in our culture, and I'm giving him the tools to do it. Robert Chen raised his hand. Ms. Hale, I appreciate the gesture, but this seems reactive. What happens when Mr. Brooks leaves? When the person championing these policies moves on, and we're left with a bureaucratic office that creates red tape without generating results? It was a fair question, and Ethan recognized the trap in it. Sustainability mattered. Change that depended on one person wasn't real change. It was just a temporary accommodation. But before Victoria could respond, Ethan spoke. "You're right to be concerned about sustainability, sir. That's why the goal isn't to build a permanent watchdog. It's to build a culture where ethical behavior is so deeply ingrained that employees hold themselves and each other accountable, where managers understand that misconduct has real consequences, where people feel safe speaking up because they've seen that speaking up leads to action." He took a breath, aware that everyone was listening. Right now, Meridian needs a dedicated ethics office because we're fixing years of cultural problems that were ignored or covered up. But in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, my hope is that this office becomes less and less necessary. Not because problems stop existing, but because the company handles them before they require formal intervention. If I've done my job right, eventually you won't need me anymore. You'll have a company that's fundamentally sound. Robert Chen studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You make a compelling case, Mr. Brooks. I move that we approve Ms. Hale's proposal regarding Mr. Brooks's appointment and the creation of the Office of Ethics and Professional Standards." "Second," Patricia said immediately. The vote was 8-4 in favor, not unanimous, but enough. Robert Chen looked at Ethan with something that might have been respect. "Mr. Brooks, congratulations. You've earned this." Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. He looked at Victoria, and she gave him the smallest nod. A promise kept, a debt acknowledged. The meeting dissolved. Board members filed out, some stopping to shake Ethan's hand, others avoiding eye contact. Marcus appeared from somewhere, clapping him on the shoulder. Within minutes, only Victoria and Ethan remained in the conference room. "I don't understand," Ethan finally managed. "How did you find that footage? How did you know to investigate Morrison?" Marcus suspected something from the beginning. The timing was too perfect, the leak too strategic. And Morrison's been trying to undermine me for years. This was just his most ambitious attempt. She walked to the windows overlooking Seattle, the city spread out below them. "When I saw what was happening to you, how quickly you were being destroyed for helping me, I realized this wasn't just about a photograph. It was about power, about who gets believed and who gets sacrificed." "So you investigated." Marcus investigated. I was too close to it, too compromised by my own involvement. But he pulled footage, tracked phone records, talked to building security. When he found the video of Morrison in my lobby, everything else fell into place. Victoria turned to face him fully. "You know what I learned this week? That the truth doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be documented, delivered, and defended. You did all three." Ethan joined her at the window. Below, people moved through streets, lived their lives, unaware of the small drama that had just played out 12 floors above them. "I still don't know if I can do this job. Build an ethics program. I'm not. You're exactly what this company needs." Victoria's voice was quiet, but absolute. "You're someone who's been through the worst we have to offer and came out the other side with your integrity intact. That gives you credibility no consultant or corporate trainer could ever match. People will trust you because they know you've been where they are being." Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Victoria, HR is asking about the public announcement. Do you want to draft it together, or should they use the standard template?" "We'll draft it. Give me 10 minutes. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Victoria turned back to Ethan. "There's one more thing. This promotion, this new role, it's not charity. It's not me trying to make up for what happened. It's me recognizing something I should have seen 3 years ago when you first interviewed. You're not just a driver. You never were. You're someone who sees what needs to be done and does it, regardless of personal cost. That's leadership. That's exactly what this company has been missing." Ethan thought about Lily, about the drawing on their refrigerator that labeled him Best Daddy. He thought about Sarah's voice in his memory. "We can only control how we respond." He thought about the past week, about the investigation and the suspension and the whispers that would probably never completely go away. I accept, but I have conditions. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. I pick my own team. No HR recommendations, no executive mandates. I want people who've been through it, people who know what it's like when the system fails them. Agreed. I report directly to you, like you said, but my findings and recommendations are shared with the entire board. Transparency. No private deals, no buried investigations. Agreed. And if I find serious misconduct, if I find executives or managers who've been abusing power or covering up problems, I can recommend termination regardless of how valuable they are to the company. No sacred cows. Victoria smiled, and for the first time since that night in the penthouse, it looked genuine. Agreed. Anything else? Yeah. I need to leave by 4 every day unless there's an emergency. I have a daughter, and she comes first. Always. I wouldn't expect anything different. Victoria extended her hand. Welcome to leadership, Ethan. He shook her hand, feeling the weight of what he'd just agreed to. This wasn't just a promotion. This was a complete transformation of everything he'd thought his career could be, from driver to director, from invisible to indispensable, from the man who helped one person on one difficult night to the person responsible for helping everyone. The rest of Friday passed in a blur. HR prepared paperwork. IT set up accounts. Facilities assigned him an office on the 9th floor. Nothing as grand as the executive suites, but his own space with a window and a door that closed. By 5 o'clock, Ethan had a new job, a new salary that was triple what he'd been making, and a mandate to fix everything that was broken in Meridian's culture. He picked Lily up from school at the usual time. She climbed into the car, he was still driving his own beat-up Honda, not the company Mercedes, and immediately launched into a story about art class. And then Mrs. Patterson said my volcano painting was the best one. And Emma said it wasn't fair because I always get picked. But I told her that's because I practice, and Lily. She stopped, looking at him with sudden concern. What's wrong? Did something bad happen? No, sweetheart. Something good happened. Really good. He took a breath, trying to figure out how to explain this to an 8-year-old. Remember how I told you I was in trouble at work? Because you helped that lady and people didn't understand. Right. Well, today, the truth came out, and it turns out I wasn't in trouble after all. In fact, I got a new job. A really important one. Lily's eyes went wide. Like a promotion? Exactly like a promotion. I'm going to help make sure that when people do the right thing at my company, they don't get punished for it. I'm going to protect people who speak up about problems. She thought about this seriously. So, you're like a superhero for fairness? Ethan laughed, the sound releasing tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Yeah, Lil. Something like that. I knew it. She settled back in her seat with satisfaction. I told everyone you were special. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open. The company intranet had already been updated. His new title appeared in the directory, his new office number listed. His email inbox had 43 messages, most from people he'd never met, all asking questions he didn't yet know how to answer. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. HR sending out announcement Monday morning. Prepare for attention. You did well today. Another message came through immediately after, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Brooks, this is Jennifer Ralph from accounting. I heard about your new position. I need to talk to you about my supervisor. He's been taking credit for my work for 2 years. Please help. Ethan stared at the message. This was it. The beginning of everything that came next. Not just his own vindication, but the responsibility to vindicate others. To be the person who listened when no one else would. To build the system he'd wished existed when he needed it most. He typed back, "Jennifer, thank you for reaching out. Come to my office Monday morning, 9 a.m. Bring any documentation you have. I promise you'll be heard." Monday morning, 8 a.m. Ethan sat in his new office, reviewing Jennifer Ralph's feeds, when his inbox pinged with a company-wide email. Subject: Important company announcement from Victoria Hale, CEO. He opened it. So did every employee at Meridian Industries. Dear Meridian team, this weekend our board of directors addressed serious concerns regarding misconduct within our leadership. After thorough investigation, we determined that Daniel Morrison, VP of Sales, orchestrated a campaign to undermine company leadership through fabricated scandal and deliberately leaked confidential information. Mr. Morrison resigned effective immediately. This investigation also revealed that Ethan Brooks, a member of our driver team, was wrongly suspended and subjected to professional humiliation for doing exactly what we should celebrate: helping a colleague in distress with professionalism and integrity. Effective immediately, Mr. Brooks has been appointed Director of Ethics and Professional Standards, reporting directly to me. His mandate is to ensure that situations like this, where good people are punished for doing good things, never happen again at Meridian. If you have experienced or witnessed misconduct, harassment, retaliation, or any behavior that violates our stated values, please contact Ethan Brooks directly at ethics@meridian.com. Your concerns will be heard, investigated, and addressed. We're building the company we've always claimed to be. That work starts now. Victoria Hale, CEO. Within an hour, Ethan's inbox had 63 messages. At 9 a.m., Jennifer Ralph knocked on his door. She looked younger than he'd expected, mid-20s, dark circles under her eyes speaking of sleepless nights. She clutched a 3-ring binder to her chest like armor. "Mr. Brooks? Call me Ethan. Please, sit." She sat but didn't relax. Her hands twisted the binder. "I wasn't sure you'd actually... I've tried reporting this before. HR told me it was normal workplace dynamics. My manager said I was oversensitive. So when I saw your email, I thought maybe it was too good to be true." "It's not." Ethan leaned forward. 3 days ago, I was suspended and investigated for doing the right thing. I know exactly what it feels like when the system protects the powerful instead of you. So when I say your concerns will be heard, I mean it." She opened the binder slowly, as if revealing something fragile. Inside, 2 years of documentation, emails with timestamps, project files showing her analysis, presentations where Richard Carlson had presented her forecasting model as his own work, her inventory optimization system, her cost reduction strategies. Ethan flipped through the pages, seeing the meticulous record of theft. "This is impressive documentation." I didn't know what else to do. Richard's been here 15 years. He's friends with half the executive team. I'm a junior analyst. Her voice cracked slightly. "Who's going to believe me?" "I believe you. And by the end of this week, Richard Carlson is going to answer for what he's been doing." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but relief, the kind that came from finally being heard after years of shouting into silence. "What happens now?" "Now I investigate. I'll interview witnesses. You mentioned other employees who've seen this?" She nodded. "At least 4 people. 2 quit because of him. 2 are still here, but too scared to report. I'll talk to all of them. I'll review every email, every project file, every presentation. And when I have enough evidence, and Jennifer, you've already given me plenty, I'll present findings to Victoria and recommend termination. He'll fight it. Let him. The evidence doesn't lie." Ethan met her eyes. "But I need you to be prepared. When Richard finds out you filed a complaint, he's going to retaliate. He'll make your work life hell. Can you handle that for a few weeks while the investigation runs?" She straightened her shoulders, and Ethan saw steel beneath the exhaustion. I've handled 2 years of having my work stolen. I can handle a few more weeks. Good. One more thing. This investigation and what comes after, it's going to be public, company-wide. Not to shame Richard, but to show everyone that reporting misconduct leads to real consequences. Are you okay with people knowing you came forward? Jennifer took a shaky breath. Will other people come forward too, if they see this works? I think so. I hope so. Then I'm okay with it. If it helps even one other person avoid what I went through, then it's worth it. Ethan walked her through the investigation process, explained her rights, gave her his cell number for emergencies. When she left 40 minutes later, she stood a little taller, walked a little steadier. As the door closed behind her, Ethan thought about the 62 other emails waiting in his inbox. 62 other people who'd been waiting for someone to listen. The magnitude of what he'd taken on crashed over him like a wave. His phone buzzed. Victoria. How'd the meeting go? He typed back. She's been documenting for 2 years. Case is solid. Starting investigation today. Good. I'm assigning you a team. Check your email. The email arrived seconds later. 5 names, 5 employee files. Sarah Winters, 32, HR specialist. Filed 3 sexual harassment complaints that went nowhere. David Park, 27, IT security. Witnessed racial discrimination in hiring practices, was told to stay in his lane. Jennifer Cole, 41, senior counsel. Reported financial misconduct, threatened with retaliation. Michael Torres, 35, operations manager. Questioned unsafe working conditions, faced retaliation. Aisha Rahman, 29, communications. Experienced pregnancy discrimination. Victoria's note at the bottom. Each one has questioned whether Meridian lives up to its values. Each one stayed because they hoped it could change. They're waiting for your call. Ethan looked at the 5 faces on his screen. 5 people who'd been broken by the system and were still brave enough to try fixing it. He started making calls. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat across from Victoria and Patricia Chen, presenting his findings on Richard Carlson. I interviewed 7 current employees and 2 former ones who left specifically because of Carlson. The pattern is systematic. He clicked through slides. Carlson has stolen credit for subordinates' work for at least 5 years. He's driven away talented employees. And HR has looked the other way because he delivers results. Patricia frowned at the evidence. This is damning. Why didn't anyone report this sooner? 2 women did. Both were told they were being difficult. Both left the company within 6 months. After that, people stopped reporting because they saw it was pointless. Victoria's jaw tightened. Recommendation? Immediate termination. And I want to announce it company-wide. Patricia looked skeptical. We typically keep personnel decisions confidential. Confidentiality protects abusers, Ethan countered. It makes victims think they're alone, that speaking up is pointless. If we're serious about culture change, people need to see consequences are real. Victoria nodded. Draft the announcement, we send it tomorrow. The email went out Wednesday morning. Effective immediately, Richard Carlson is no longer employed by Meridian Industries. Following investigation by our Office of Ethics and Professional Standards, we determined Mr. Carlson violated company policy by systematically claiming credit for work produced by subordinates over a 5-year period. We are grateful to Jennifer Ralph and the other employees who came forward. Their courage reflects the integrity we want to foster at Meridian. If you have experienced similar misconduct, please contact the Office of Ethics and Professional Standards. Speaking up leads to action. By noon, Ethan had 23 new reports. 6 months passed in a blur of investigations, terminations, policy changes. Ethan's team grew to 8 people. They'd handled 127 cases. Terminated 6 employees, including 3 managers. Implemented new policies on harassment, retaliation, whistleblower protection. Employee satisfaction scores rose 34%. Turnover dropped 22%. But numbers didn't tell the real story. The real story was in moments like this. A Thursday afternoon in April. Ethan reviewing case files when his phone buzzed. Victoria. Board meeting in 30 minutes. They want to discuss your department's budget. Bring your ROI presentation. Robert Chen opened the meeting with a question Ethan had been expecting. Mr. Brooks, your department cost us $3.2 million last quarter. Some board members question whether this investment is sustainable. What's our return? Ethan clicked to his first slide. Not numbers, but a face. Jennifer Ralph. Before I show you spreadsheets, let me tell you about an employee. Jennifer documented 2 years of her supervisor stealing credit for her work. When I gave her a chance to be heard, we terminated him. Within 2 weeks, she developed a system saving us $400,000 annually. He paused. That's one employee. Here's what happens across the company. Next slide. Retention metrics. Employee turnover dropped 22% in investigated departments. 43 fewer resignations in 6 months. At $75,000 per replacement, that's $3.2 million saved, exactly what we cost. He advanced. 4 lawsuits prevented, $800,000 in legal fees saved. Employee satisfaction up from 31 to 68%. When people trust the system protects them, they give their best work. You can't put that on a balance sheet, but it's everything that makes one possible. Robert Chen raised his hand. Mr. Brooks, you make a compelling case, but I have one concern. What happens when you leave? When the person championing these policies moves on, and we're left with a bureaucratic office that creates red tape without results? It was the question Ethan had been preparing for. You're right to worry about sustainability. That's why the goal isn't to build a permanent watchdog. It's to build a culture where ethical behavior is so ingrained that employees hold themselves accountable. Right now, we need a dedicated office because we're fixing years of cultural rot. But in 3, 5, 10 years, my hope is this office becomes less necessary because the company handles problems before they require formal intervention. If I've done my job right, you won't need me anymore. You'll have a company that polices itself. Robert Chen studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I move we approve funding for another fiscal year. Second, Patricia said. The vote was 8-4, not unanimous, but enough. After the meeting, Victoria caught Ethan in the hallway. You did well in there. Thanks. Though I'm pretty sure 4 board members still think I'm a waste of money. 4 board members are wrong. She smiled. How's the team doing? Good. Sarah's developing training programs. David's building better reporting systems. We're making progress. Speaking of progress, Victoria pulled out her phone, showed him an article. We made a list. Best places to work, top 50 nationally. Meridian Industries ranked 47th. Last year we were 340, Victoria said quietly. You did this. We did this. No, Ethan, you did this. By believing that integrity matters more than optics, that people deserve better, that doing the right thing should be rewarded, not punished. She looked at him with something that might have been gratitude or respect or both. That night at the gala when I asked you to stay, I didn't just need help getting home. I needed to know that decent people still existed. You proved they do. And now you're building a company full of them. I'm trying. You're succeeding. 1 year after the gala, on a Friday afternoon in October, Lily, now 9 years old, came to visit Daddy's office for her birthday. She bounced through the 9th floor with the enthusiasm only 9-year-olds possessed, backpack decorated with drawings of cats and stars. This is where you work now? She spun around, taking in the office that was no longer just Ethan, but a full department. Sarah was training new investigators. David was reviewing security protocols. Jennifer Cole was on a call with legal. Yep, This is where we work. It's so big. Lily spotted the wall with photos of the team. Are all these people fairness superheroes like you? Sarah overheard and laughed. Your dad's the superhero. We're just sidekicks. That's not true, Ethan protested. It absolutely is, Sarah said. You're the one who made this possible. Lily looked at her father with pride fierce enough to make his chest ache. See? I told you everyone knows you're special. They had lunch at a burger place Lily chose, the kind with oversized milkshakes and a jukebox that played songs from before she was born. Victoria met them there, arriving in jeans and a simple blouse rather than her usual CEO armor. Lily studied Victoria with the frank assessment of children who hadn't yet learned to hide their thoughts. You're the one my dad helped, the one who made him the ethics director. That's right. Your dad did something very brave that night. Lily nodded seriously. He always does the right thing, even when it's hard. That's what makes him a hero. Victoria met Ethan's eyes across the table. Yes, that's exactly what makes him a hero. After lunch, driving Lily home, she was quieter than usual. Finally, she spoke. Daddy, can I tell you something? Always. I'm really glad you helped Ms. Hale that night, even though it was hard and people were mean, because if you hadn't, you wouldn't have your important job now, and all those people you help wouldn't have anyone to protect them. Maybe someone else would have helped them. Maybe. But it wouldn't have been you, and you're the best at it. She paused, thinking. You helped one person who was sad, and then you helped more people. It's like, when you're nice to someone, they're nice to other people too. Ethan's throat tightened. When had his daughter become this wise? Yeah, Lil, that's exactly how good things grow. That evening, after Lily was asleep with her drawing of Daddy the Fairness Superhero taped above her bed, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop. An email from a Phoenix employee he'd never met. Mr. Brooks, I've been experiencing harassment for 8 months. After seeing what happened with Jennifer Ralph and the others, I finally have hope that reporting won't destroy my career. Can we talk? Ethan typed back. Absolutely. Here's my cell. Call any time. He closed the laptop and walked to Lily's doorway. She slept peacefully, one hand curled under her chin, breathing soft and even. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Just saw we made best places to work. Top 50. We were number 340 last year. You did this. He typed, we did this. But the truth was more complicated. Culture change wasn't one person's victory. It was hundreds of small decisions, people choosing to speak up, leaders choosing to listen, systems choosing justice over convenience. Still, sitting in his daughter's doorway, watching her sleep in the apartment that had been home through the hardest years of both their lives, Ethan let himself believe that maybe the world rewarded integrity more often than he'd thought. Not always, not perfectly, but sometimes. And sometimes was enough to keep fighting. A year ago, a photograph had almost destroyed him. Now, he was building something that would outlast his tenure. A system where truth mattered more than optics, where kindness wasn't punished, where the question, did we, could be answered honestly and believed. Ethan Brooks had once thought his job was to drive cars from point A to point B. Turns out, his real job was to drive change, not with authority or credentials, but with the simple, stubborn belief that people deserved better. 1 year later, 63 people had reached out that first Monday. By now, hundreds had filed reports, some legitimate, some not, all requiring careful investigation. And every single one got the same response Ethan had given Jennifer. I believe you. Let's figure this out together. Because that's how heroes are made. Not from power or position, but from the courage to do the right thing when everyone else walks away. One person, one choice, one hand held instead of let go.